Good evening, everybody. It is 6 o'clock and we start on time. So if you would like to stand for our invocation. And Andrea, would you like to come up and give an example of the really great invocations that you do? I've been spending a lot of time with Andrea and Dwight on the campaign trail and here and there, but I've known her for 10 years, and you're probably tired of me, so I'm going to give you some fresh biblical. Okay? Here she comes.
Oh, I love to pray over you guys. Let's do it. Heavenly Father, we adore you. We are happiest when you call us to service, Lord. In Isaiah looked up and saw you on the throne, and you said, "Who shall I send as a messenger to my people who will go for us?" And Isaiah said, "Here, my Lord, send me." Father, we're so grateful that we have a room full of believing patriots. Thank you, Father, for the blessings that you've bestowed on the United States of America. Back in the Old Testament, Lord, we learned that you can do anything with anyone. There was a king of Persia who had the Jews in captivity, but you worked on this man Cyrus, who was not a believer, who was not a Jew. And you went and changed his heart, Lord, and he, Cyrus, allowed the Jews to return to their homeland and build the temple. Father, nothing is impossible for you. Daniel 11:32, the people who know their God will stand firm and take action. Lord, right over the exit to the church, it says, "This is our mission field." Indeed it is. Our first allegiance is to the Lord Jesus. Our second is to the blessing that's the United States of America that you gave to us. So Father, tonight, energize us. Get us out and working hard. Father, give us compassion. Give us faithfulness. Give us energy to get out there and help you, Lord, save the United States of America. Thank you for Donald J. Trump. Protect him, protect his health, and Father, bring his heart close to yours and yours close to him so that he can truly, truly be a man of God. And we pray all this in Jesus Christ's perfect name. Amen.
Amen. You see?
You are right.
I'm right. I'm not always right, but I'm right in this regard. Okay, the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, everybody. Well, things happen so quickly in our world, the United States of America these days. And there's always something in the news popping. So we were so grateful to hear that President Trump is out of Walter Reed and back home and still taking it easy so he doesn't relapse. But anyhow, we're very grateful for that. So as far as our Tea Party meetings go, there's a lot going on and everybody has things to do. There's, for instance, tonight, Mark Kelly and Martha McSally are on the debate stage. So I did not know until 4 o'clock this afternoon this was happening on PBS, but they'll probably rerun it. So when you get home later this evening, it is Channel 8 on most, because it's one of the regular Arizona stations. So if you get a chance, tune in later and see if the debate is on. So we'll get to the rest of the news, the upcoming events, after we hear from our speakers. So let me tell you that Dwight and Andrea Kadar have been quite the Tea Party folks since 2009 when we all picked up. I met them probably in 2010 and have networked with them. They are, the Cottonwood Tea Party melded into the Citizens, was Concerned Citizens for America, now it's Citizens for America group, and they meet at the Cowboy Church in Sedona, and Brenda and I have been over quite a few of their meetings, and they do a good job. They only meet once a month though. However, they are on the road all the time. 2 years ago, it was the the medical marijuana, no, 4 years ago.
It was the first ballot.
It was the first ballot initiative where they tried to get recreational marijuana. And we had them come to our tea party back then and talk about all the ins and outs of what was actually in the fine print. Because a lot of these initiatives, people do not understand what they're all about because they sound safe and sane. Safe and what is it? Safe and healthy. Smart and safe marijuana, right. Sounds really good, but until you get into the 17 pages of fine print. So anyhow, they have also been with us talking about the sexuality, it was sex trafficking. Remember they came a year ago or so and we were talking about sex trafficking and all of that. That's becoming a huge, huge issue across our nation and from across our borders. So that was another one, so maybe we'll have them after the election and the first of the year, we'll have them back to talk about an update on what's happening there. And they have been here before on other issues. So anyhow, with that, I'm going to turn over. Dwight is, where is Dwight? Dwight's back there. Dwight's the other half of Andrea. They are the Kadars. And so he's going to pop up here too, right?
Yes.
Yep, he'll be popping up here. So anyhow, with that, here is Andrea Kadar.
Thank you so much. So if you guys could pull the PowerPoint up, that would be great. So, you know, I was looking through some quotes the other day because I was going to do a radio show on Prop 207 and I was trying to find something funny and I found an old Mark Twain quote, so I'm going to add Democrat in it. Do you know that Democrat politicians are like diapers? They ought to be changed often and for the same reasons. And then I saw another one, and I didn't memorize it, so I'll tell you. It was from Lynn Dighton. He said, in Mexico, we call Democratic politicians air conditioners because they make a lot of noise and don't work very well. I like that one even better. Okay, good. So let's talk about commercialization of recreational marijuana. And Shirley is right. This is Prop 207 we're going to talk about tonight. And you remember back in 2016, they came at us with Prop 205, and we defeated it, only by 66,000 and change votes. And I want to tell you guys, I'm so proud of the northern rural counties, the red counties, because you guys all came out and you did a fantastic job helping the big beast, Maricopa, kill Prop 205. Literally, it was the northern rural red counties that saved the day. So let's do it again. Because if you think Prop 205 was egregious and one-sided and self-dealing and self-absorbed by big corporate marijuana, wait till you see 207. Here we go again. So let's do a quick review because I want to show you a couple things before we actually talk about the prop. And we're not going to have an emotional discussion tonight. We Republicans deal in facts. We don't deal in emotions like some other folks do. And so I found a great quote from Silent Spring, and it's about the fact that we can make good decisions as Arizonans as long as we know exactly what the facts are. And there was another Mark Twain quote I found, and it said, it ain't what you don't know that gets you in trouble. It's what you know for sure that just ain't so. So a lot of people have misconstrued feelings or facts about this, and let's get to the real facts. So let's talk about basic 101. Let's talk about marijuana and cannabis. You all know that marijuana, cannabis, weed, pot, there's a lot of names. It's made up of multiple compounds, but the two predominant ones are THC and CBD. Now, THC is the component that gets you high. That's the one that induces euphoria. It's the psychoactive component. It enhances sensation. Now, what we're going to learn tonight, if you don't already know, is this pot, this weed, this marijuana, in 2020 is not your 70s marijuana, not your grandpa's weed. It is a whole different ballgame. It's still illegal federally. And then the other big component is CBD. It's the non-psychoactive component. It does have some limited benefits. How many CBD products in the United States are FDA approved? How many?
0.
One.
Oh, one.
Just one. It was formulated by GW Pharmaceuticals out of Great Britain. It's called Epidiolex. It's only approved for 2 seizure syndromes. So I would caution you guys, if you're buying CBD from a county fair or a storefront, be very careful. Because CBD that's not FDA approved, that's not gone through all of the stages of FDA approval, might interact inappropriately with your liver or your cardiac medication. A good friend of mine says it's like buying gas station sushi, which you wouldn't do. So be very careful with CBD because there's only one product in the whole United States that's gone through the process. So let's talk about today's weed. This is maybe the most important and significant slide we'll talk about. Back in the 70s, flower, smokable weed, had about 2% THC. Today, what they're doing is they're hydroponically growing it, they're genetically engineering it, that the average is about 20-25%. But I will tell you, we've seen something called Godfather OG that's 35% THC. That is a significantly different product. Look at this. On the other end of the scale, the high end, we see products called butter, wax, shatter. Those are the concentrates or oils. They're dabbed in e-cigarettes. You guys, have you seen kids with Juuls with the e-cigarettes? They're vaping. That's how they're consumed. They have 90% plus THC. They're so powerful. We're seeing young people, even older people, show up in emergency departments with psychotic breaks, paranoia, and hallucinations. That's how powerful these products are. And then right in the middle are the products that really concern me, and they're marijuana edibles, like cookies, candies, chocolate, frosting, pot, tarts, Nutella, chocolate bars, and they can have anything between maybe 50, 60, 70% THC, depending on the product and depending on the serving. And so look at this. This was a medical marijuana doctor who said marijuana extracts, those are the high-end oils with 90%, should be banned. And his concern is they're so potent that they can actually put somebody in the hospital. Ben Court is the most fascinating fellow. I met him at a drug summit here in Arizona. He was in Phoenix. And the reason Ben is an interesting guy is he's a former addict, and he worked at the University of Colorado, alcohol and drug rehab. He's also written an extraordinary book called Weed Inc. about the marijuana industry. And look at what Ben says. He says, this marijuana plant has been bioengineered into a hardcore drug. He calls it the crack of weed. And he said, this is not a partisan politics issue, but a public health crisis. Really and truly, we kind of look at this sometimes as being a Republican or Democrat issue, because sometimes the Democrats will say, we want this in our platform. Bernie tried to put it in the platform and so forth. But it's really not a red or a blue issue, it's a green issue. It's all about big marijuana wanting to make big money wherever they legalize these products. And I want to make something very clear. Medical marijuana in Arizona is legal. That was voted in 2010. And so what's happening now is what the industry wants to do, what the marijuana industry wants to do is they want to expand it to do full recreational use of those medical products. And I do want to pose a question to you from the get-go, and that is this. How many of you use medicine recreationally? I mean, if I called you and said, come over to my house and bring your blood pressure medication and let's get high, you'd laugh, because that's a non sequitur. That doesn't even make any sense. So if it's medicine, I suggest why don't we leave it medicine rather than use it recreationally. It doesn't make much sense. For you visual learners, I want to show you a picture. See all the candy and the chocolates and all that on the shelf? Those are going to be sold in the dispensaries. Those are high potency products. And what looks like silly putty down at the bottom, that's wax and shatter. That's the oils that can be vaped or dabbed. And there's a young fellow with an e-cigarette. He's vaping. And unfortunately, a lot of our Arizona kids have e-cigarettes. They're not supposed to, because you're supposed to be 18, but you can get them from disreputable stores, or you can get them online by fibbing about your age. We're really worried about young folks and vaping, because we don't want them to graduate to marijuana, and some of them are already doing it. Here's another chart that shows you kind of the difference with the little buds up there between 1970s marijuana and today's marijuana in terms of THC potency. But look at the hot tarts in the middle, POT tarts. And that's something that unfortunately appeals to kids, and that's not a Mr. Good bar, that's a Mr. Dank bar, but look how similar the packaging looks. And most kids are see and grab. And so most children don't read labels, and that's why we have children ending up in emergency departments and admitted into hospitals, either dizzy or in comas, because they've gotten their hands on marijuana products. There's a little marijuana energy drink. See the Sharpie? That's not a Sharpie. That is a vape pen made to look like a Sharpie so you can sneak it into school, and kids are doing this. And then the backpack and the hoodie, see the young lady with the hoodie, they both have hoses that come out so they can dab or vape and be discreet about it. And look how these products are primarily marketed to kids or teenagers for sure. Okay, let's do a quick look at Colorado, because Colorado is very instructive for us. I think we smart Arizonans know that if somebody else has gone through this and they've had a grand experiment in their community, why don't we see what their experience is before we duplicate it or make the same mistakes? And so when I was looking at Colorado, there is an extraordinarily good report. It's called the Rocky Mountain High Intensity Drug Trafficking Area Study. And the RMHIDTA is an aggregation of data from law enforcement, hospitals, psychiatric clinics, schools, CDOT. And so they aggregate this data about what's happening as a result of marijuana recreational legalization. And I think this is very instructive for us. What happened after Colorado had 5 full years of experience with recreational marijuana legalization? THC traffic deaths are up more than 109%. THC-related emergency department visits up more than 54%. THC hospital visits, look at that, 101%. Exposures, 400%. What is that? That is parents calling poison control in a panic because their little children between 1 and 8 have gotten a hold of a marijuana edible, like a lollipop or a gummy, and consumed it. And I saw something in the latest report that really scared the fire out of me. It said suicide reports where toxicology were positive for marijuana, 14% in 2013, up to 23% in 2017. Suicides. Now, why is that? Because these products are so high in THC, people who are using them are hallucinating, like I said before, are paranoid, and then they hurt someone, including themselves. That's how dangerous they are. Marijuana seizures in the United States Postal Service up 1,004%. What in the heck is that? This is in our initiative, and this scares me more than anything. That's home grows. In our initiative, which I'll tell you about in a minute, you can have marijuana plants in your house, and I'll explain that further. Colorado did this. They said in their constitutional amendment, you can have 1 plant per 21-year-old, 2 plants for another 21-year-old, 2 plants maximum. What happened? That sounds so innocent. What happened? Crime Inc., the cartels, said, party. We're going to move in, hide in plain sight, buy residential real estate, and grow in houses. Because law enforcement can't come into your house without a warrant. There's got to be some degree of criminality or some suspicious of it. So here are all these people with residential real estate whose neighbors could have been cartel members, or in fact are. There's plenty of articles in the RMHIDTA about gunfire in Colorado neighborhoods because the cartels bought houses and grew, and then what they do, shipped it out of Colorado to states where it wasn't legal for huge profits. What a mess Colorado made of this. Look at this. Dispensaries, that's medical and recreational, 1,004. Starbucks, $3.92, McDonald's, $2.08. It's easier to get weed in Colorado than a burger and a coffee. And there was a report on a website called My 420 Tours, and the guy was bragging, Colorado is awash in weed. I thought, wouldn't that be an awful thing to say about Arizona, that we're awash in weed? Everybody says this is going to be a windfall for our schools, for this and that. Nope. And in fact, the Centennial Institute in Denver did a really, really good report. They said for every buck we're collecting in taxes, what are we spending for the unintended consequences? Like homelessness, like additional law enforcement needed, like kids dropping out of school, like healthcare costs, $4.50. Did you hear that? For every buck, they're taking in $4.50. What a mess that is. Violent crime up 42%, property crime, homelessness is happening in Denver. And what really fascinated me was in Colorado, when they did the constitutional amendment, they asked communities, do you want recreational marijuana in your jurisdiction? And they allowed communities to opt out. So all these unfortunate statistics are coming from 1/3 of Colorado jurisdictions. And I'm gonna give you a trivia quiz right now. Under our initiative, can Payson opt out of recreational sales in a medical marijuana store because they're going to get a license automatically? Can you say no in this community? Do not come here, go away, we don't want it.
No.
That's right. Now how fair is that? That they didn't ask us voters whether or not we wanted it. THC flower potency, we talked about this a little, I want to emphasize it again. We've seen something called THCA, crystalline hash, that's 99% THC. This is scary stuff. And unfortunately, it's going to be for sale, and it's going to be commercialized under any kind of recreational initiative. A CDOT survey, Colorado Department of Transportation, 7 out of 10 drivers admitted driving high and thought it was safe. A lot of people who are high or still have metabolites in their blood think they're fine, when in fact they're not. That's really scary to me, that Arizona highways could have more high drivers. This one really bugs me. They say our kids won't use. Are our kids using now?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Where are they getting it?
From everybody else that buys it.
That's right. And medical marijuana card holders who are willing to sell it to them. We're really worried about Arizona children and weed because they think it's safe, it's easier to get. I was at a ladies' conference on the weekend, a bunch of Christian girls in Sedona. And I had a bunch of young girls come over to my table from Yuma. And I said, oh, I'm so glad to see you guys because I want to ask you 2 questions. One, are your friends using weed? They said, yep. And I said, what do they say about how they get it? They say, oh, it's easier to get than alcohol. And then I asked them, are you guys talking about it on social media? And they said there's stuff all over YouTube, Snapchat, Instagram, and TikTok, which is exactly where they live, which we'll talk about more in a minute. So 12 years and older use, past month use in Colorado, 78% higher than the national average. Adult use, 94% higher than the national average. College age use, 48% higher than the national average. They said that marijuana would help with opioid addiction. No, it does not. Look at this, opioid deaths increase. And then here's the thing that really concerns me, you guys. They talked a lot in Colorado about, oh, we're going to regulate it. We're going to tax it and regulate it. Stop worrying because we're going to have good law enforcement. We're going to have good regulation. But look at this. Scott Pack, who was a distributor, and who's Renee Ayrton? She was with the government enforcing it. She decided it was more fun and more lucrative to join with Scott, and they put together a big home grow operation to ship out just like the cartels were doing. And so unfortunately, you can have all the regulation in the world, but if you have no enforcement or it's spotty, you don't have anything. What else? So Pueblo County arrested 3 people for an illegal home grow. It was the Cuban cartel, 180 plants in one house. Again, that could have been our neighbors. Marijuana consultant Michael Stonehouse and a bunch of other licensees were growing out of houses. I just kind of want to show you how prolific this crime industry is once home grows were allowed in the Colorado initiative. And again, there was gunfire. When they grow, they gut the house because they go underneath in the foundation to steal water and electricity because it takes a lot of water and electricity to go grow weed. So the houses are trashed too. And these are nice neighborhoods. Look, this was in a gated community. And then there was a lady also who was a distributor, and she was arrested for possession. So look, I'm not impugning the reputation of people in the marijuana industry, but where there's big money, there can be bad behavior. So I think we have to be very careful about that. A Colorado State University study, 2 out of 3 marijuana industry employees came to work high and then used at work and then drove home. A Westwood study, this was more of a national study after recreational legalization. 1 out of 2 non-marijuana people came to work high and then they drove home, and they did so once a week, according to the study. This one really bugs me. 7 out of 10 dispensaries recommend marijuana for morning sickness. These are bud tenders telling young pregnant moms it's okay and will help your morning sickness. Legal weed equals corporate greed. I can't imagine anybody in their right mind telling a pregnant mom that it's okay to use marijuana for morning sickness. And then one of the things we worry about is under our initiative, you're only supposed to have 1 ounce, but look at this. The sweet leaf marijuana facilities were arrested, the bud tenders were arrested because an undercover law enforcement officer came into a sweet leaf dispensary and were sold an ounce 13 times in one day. And I don't know how they didn't recognize him or whether they didn't care, but again, if you have no regulation and no enforcement, then it's for nothing. This fascinates me. Karen Randall is a board-certified emergency physician and a cannabis expert. And she is part of SAM, Smart Approaches to Marijuana. And she's really outspoken. She's just brave as heck. Look what Karen said. The Colorado legalization is damaged rather than help. This is going to be a crisis, says Dr. Randall, with potential long-term consequences. It's going to be lasting damages and lasting injury as well as significant cost to the public. The other thing she said that I didn't put in my slide, listen to this. This is really going to knock you out of your chair. She says, I think the public needs to know that we, Colorado, are not okay. She said the grand experiment is not going well. She says state government has not only ignored scientific findings to push sales of deer, but failed in the regulatory responsibility it promised would accompany regulation. Oh my, that's not good, and I hope that's not going to be something that we'd have to deal with. I'm going to go through these real fast because you might have remembered me talking about this. On the way over, Dwight and I were looking at the Tonto. What a beautiful ride it is from Sedona all the way over here to Payson. And this was one of the most interesting talks I have ever heard. This was about 2 years ago at the Drug Summit down in Phoenix. There was a stately gentleman whose name was Murad Gabriel, Dr. Gabriel, like the angel's name. He was a veterinarian, ecologist, biologist from UC Davis. He told a story that really concerned us because what Dr. Gabriel does is he works, among other things, with endangered species in California. After legalization of recreational marijuana, he said, we could not believe the environmental consequences. And he went on to tell the story that there's a little animal, it's about the size of a large house cat. It's a carnivore. It lives in late-stage forests like Yosemite and the Sierras. Now, I'm not talking about South American country. I'm talking about the United States, the state of California. These little guys, the fishers, are monitored by Dr. Gabriel because they're endangered, just like we spend so many tax dollars trying to save these little guys. He said when the fisher would come into their lab, they would be deceased from maybe a broken bone. Maybe a truck hit them somewhere way out in the country. But he said all of a sudden, after recreational legalization, fishers were coming in by the truckload intact. And so they did necropsies, autopsies on an animal, and they found that their organs had deteriorated. They were mushy. And when they did lab work, they found huge amounts of rodenticides, poisons. So Dr. Gabriel took a team out into the forest, and they found marijuana grows everywhere back in these remote forests, 80 to 100,000 plants. The cartels had camped there. There were 10 feet of trash. They were stealing water. Salmon and other fish were on the side of the streams that had been essentially eradicated because they were taking water to the plants because the plants need so much water. The rodenticides in huge amounts were just left at the campsites, kind of turned over so they were seeping into the campsite, and they left hot dogs and bread and eggs and all this other. So the little guys would come in at night and eat this and die horrific deaths. The other thing they would do is they would have great big rows, and so to keep the animals out of the rows, they would take tuna cans, take half the tuna out, leave half of it in, put rodenticides in the other half, so you had half tuna, half rodenticides, and circle the grows. So the little animals would come up to eat the tuna, and then you had a circle of little dead animals all the way around the grow sites. What Dr. Gabriel said that was really concerning was, guys, he said in the spring, it rains. So all these rodenticides were seeping into the watersheds, seeping into the ocean, seeping into the streams. He said we had to warn villages downstream from all this that your water could be compromised. Hunters' game was compromised. This toxic weed being grown out in the middle of nowhere is being consumed by somebody. It's black market weed. And so somebody's getting high levels of toxicity. He said, we had no idea that we would have to deal with this after recreational legalization. And he said to us, the last thing he said to us was, Arizona, don't do this. He said, we had no idea we would have this kind of a mess. He said, my recommendation is don't go down this road. So a word to the wise. Okay, let's talk about Prop 207. This is the Smart and Safe initiative that is on our ballot in November. It made it all the way through to the ballot. They got 400 signatures. It's called Smart and Safe. It is neither. It is one-sided, it is self-dealing, it is self-absorbed. Now, here's the thing. They raised almost $4 million to get it on the ballot, and who do you think the money behind this is? This is an easy question. It's the big dispensaries. Yes, the big dispensaries, because it's all about them making a whole lot of money, and it's about us having to clean up the mess afterward. So almost $4 million was raised, and a predominant amount of it was raised by Curaleaf, Harvest Health, who actually is based here in Arizona, and then Cresco Labs. They did get 400,000 signatures. We sued them. My stakeholders team sued them. And the reason we did is because Smart and Safe is misleading. We don't think that tells the uninformed voter anything about this initiative. And if you read the 100-word description, it doesn't give you a whole lot of information about what's in this initiative or how problematic it is. And we don't think that's fair, because we know a lot of voters are busy and don't read 17 pages of ballot initiative. If they had wanted to decriminalize small amounts of marijuana, they could have done it in one page. But instead they wrote a self-serving 17-page document that most voters will never look at. So it is going through to the ballot because it's a ballot initiative, right? And ballot initiatives are supposed to be citizen-driven in Arizona, right? So the Supreme said, okay, if the voters signed it, not knowing what was in it, by the way, then let it go to the ballot, let the voters decide. So once again, we have to spend a lot of money and have to fight big corporate marijuana. So how many of you agree with me that maybe the Arizona legislature could help us in the next session stop allowing big corporate dark money to come in here and put ballot initiatives on our ballot so that we have to worry about them and we have to fight them? Who agrees with me that that's a bad idea? Enough already. Okay, what else? So, ballot initiatives, trivia question. Ballot initiatives are fixable after we pass them or not?
No.
Good, you guys are smart, absolutely right. A ballot initiative that's citizen-driven in Arizona is voter protected. So the governor can't veto it, the legislature can't reverse it, the legislature can only enhance it. The only way we get rid of this dadgum thing is we do another ballot initiative to kill it. How many times in Arizona has that happened? Virtually never. So you see what we're up against and why if we do this and we hate what we do, we're stuck. Okay. So you can have an ounce of flour and you've got to be 21 years old. But let me tell you something, an ounce of flour can produce about 60 joints. That's a lot, and the growing season can be 3 times a year. So you can have a lot of marijuana being grown with just 1 ounce. And then it says that you have to be 21 or older, but kids are getting it right now, right? We know that they are. In fact, I think I told you this story before. Sylvia Allen told me that in Navajo County, some of the law enforcement, Randy Moffat and some of his guys came over to talk to the kids at the high school, and they were talking about marijuana, and a bunch of the kids got out of their chairs when they said that drug-sniffing dogs can smell it about, several hundred feet away, and they went out to their cars to get the pot out of their cars because they were scared the doggies would scratch their paint jobs. I mean, that's how prolific it is. And Sylvia was also saying that one of her family members drove Uber, I think it was, one night, and he picked up, this gentleman picked up some kids, and he said, where do you want to go? And they said, to the lake to smoke pot, and they were all 16. So there's a lot of kids using right now, and the last thing we need to do is exacerbate that. Potency. We talked about the fact that there's no limit on potency in this initiative. It's 90% plus, and so here's the thing that I think we really need to understand. You guys are smart, so that you would probably pass this test, but when I talk to voters, I say to voters, how many of you think marijuana is the same old harmless weed from the 70s where you had to smoke a lot of joints and then you ate a big old thing of M&Ms and you hated yourself in the morning? This is not that weed anymore. But here's what big marijuana did. In Arizona, hashish, cannabis, was defined as a narcotic. The products that were really high in potency were defined as narcotics. What the ballot initiative did, what Big Pot did, is redefine them as marijuana. You see the problem? People are thinking this is 2% weed because they're calling it marijuana. But in fact, it is very high potency hashish, redefined as marijuana. See how the voters are getting fooled by this and not fully understanding what's in this ballot initiative? That was purposeful, I think. And that's a real problem because I think a lot of voters are being hoodwinked by this. 5 grams of concentrate are allowed. I asked one of my experts, one of my doctors who's an addiction specialist, what does that compute to? And he said about 2,800 servings of THC. That's a lot. I nearly fell off my chair. And he said, here's the problem with concentrate. He said, smokable weed's not popular anymore. It's kind of like old school. He said, people really love the wax and shatter. They really want the more high potency products. And so the high potency products are the big sellers, and they're the most dangerous. Look, here we go. What's in this initiative? Home grows. See it? The very thing that we were talking about in Colorado, they stuck it in our initiative. So you can have 6 plants if you're 21, or, 6 or 12. But the problem is, what are we doing to ourselves here? Are we inviting Crime Inc.? Are we inviting the criminals to come in? Is it a welcome mat, just like it was in Colorado, for people to move in next door to us and sell and then ship? Advertising. In the initiative, it says that they can't advertise directly to children, meaning they can't text your kids, but it doesn't limit advertising to any medium. So that means okay TV, okay radio, okay print media, and what else? Exactly. Thank you. Where do your children and your grandchildren live, right? And what else? Yes, sir, on their phones. How many of you have actually looked at TikTok or YouTube or Snapchat or Instagram? Not Facebook, because they're not much on Facebook. They think it's oldie stuff like us. they love and they love TikTok because it's what's on TikTok? Visual apps. There's a lot of visual. There's a lot of funny things going on, goofy stuff, and it's all visual. It's all like little skits and rhymes stuff. Big Pot's gonna be allowed to advertise there. And I asked those little girls who came over to my table at the ladies' conference, are you guys seeing stuff on TikTok or on YouTube? Oh yeah, all the time. Funny stuff about kids using pot and getting all goofy or giving it to animals. I almost fell over backwards because I thought that's the worst thing that could possibly happen. So the last thing we need is for big marijuana to advertise to our children. Medical and recreational dispensaries. You have a medical dispensary right down the street. Will that medical dispensary automatically be given a recreational license under our initiative? Yes, they will. Absolutely. So any recreational dispensary will automatically be given a license whether we want that or not. I don't think that's fair. I think they should have asked us voters whether or not we wanted to do that. Here you go. Underneath this initiative, it says something to the effect that Arizona Department of Health Services can set rules to permit recreational marijuana deliveries. Pot delivered like pizza in 2023. No kidding. I mean, I'm concerned about our kids and our grandkids out in the yard playing, and it's not the ice cream truck riding around your neighborhood, it is the pot truck. Now, I think that's the wrong message for our kids, just to say the least. Public consumption. They say that you can't smoke in public, you can't have a joint, but it's pretty much silent on marijuana edibles or vaping. I mean, a lot of people who are vaping, it's odorless, and so how do you know if it's marijuana or something else? P.S. I know you can't see this very well, but which one is the marijuana cookie? Which one is the marijuana lollipop? Looks pretty similar even from this vantage point, right? And if I were eating one sitting outside the church, would you know whether it was Walmart or weed? It's very hard to differentiate, so people can, consume these products in public, and who's going to know? Plus, this is something that your 5-year-old might just see and grab, which is a concern to all of us. And it's a petty offense, too. When I'll talk about that in a minute, that's really a problem, I think, under this initiative. THC potency up to 90%, maybe even more. The only thing they limited was marijuana edibles. They said they have to be in 10 milligram servings and you can have 100 milligrams per package. Let me tell you a real life story, and I'm not going to use her name because she'd kill me. I have a friend in Sedona. She got a medical marijuana card. She got some mints. I'm talking little old baby mints, 10 milligrams a piece, just exactly what we're talking about. So we were riding to Prescott to go to a Trump event, and she pops one. Did anything happen? No. Because why? Why? If we all had a glass of wine, maybe after the tea party, we might start to feel it pretty quickly, right? But what happens with marijuana edibles? Do you feel it immediately?
No, it takes time.
That's right.
Digestion, yeah.
Good, exactly. So she wasn't feeling anything for about 30 minutes. So what'd she do? She popped another one. So that's 20 milligrams of THC, right? That doesn't sound like very much. 2 little baby mints. We got to Prescott, parked the car. She literally fell out of the car, flat on her face in the street. She was so high. Thank God she wasn't driving. That's how potent these little mints are. I mean, we could not believe it. And so that's why we're concerned that even though it sounds good, only 10 milligrams, they're much more potent than you think. They say in the initiative that the edibles can't be in animal shapes, like gummy worms, but they don't preclude anything else like cotton candy, frosting, Nutella, hot tarts, gummies. Well, they can be gummies, but they can't be in the shape of an animal. But it doesn't limit anything like suckers or chocolate or cookies, and so kids can still get their hands on those. And then the DUID laws, the best way to explain it is this. If we use the same example and we all went out and had a glass of wine or two after the tea party, and we're riding down the street and the sheriff sees us, we would be in big trouble if we're 0.08, right? The per se limit for alcohol inebriation or alcohol blood content. Is there a really good, valid breathalyzer test to measure marijuana intoxication?
No.
That's right, exactly. I mean, they can do maybe urine tests or blood tests, but they're not conclusive. And think about this, not to be unladylike, but how would you like to do a urine test on the side of the highway in broad daylight? It's not happening. So we don't have a good way to measure marijuana intoxication. So how do you prosecute someone who injures you under the law if this is the situation? All kinds of problems with this problem. No funding for K through 12 schools. Good. That's what they love to say. Oh, we're going to send the money to the schools. Well, there's no funding for K through 12, but that's a bad idea anyway. Why would we want to send a message to our kids that we're funding their schools with drug money? That doesn't make any sense to me. But here's where it's going. They say there's going to be some taxes, and here's where the taxes are going to go. They're going to go to a highway fund, to community colleges, to police and fire. First of all, I don't want them to send a message to our young college kids that we're funding your schools with drug money. Second, I talked to Sergeant Jim Gerhardt. He's with Denver Metro Police, and I said, so Sergeant Jim, when the pot people came to Colorado, did law enforcement accept money from them? He said, heck no. That would have been a conflict of interest. We said, absolutely not. We're not accepting money from big marijuana. So I think that's an interesting perspective. And then they say they want to give to the Highway User Fund. Well, what do they anticipate? Problems on the highways? So I think this is a very telling story with where they want the taxes to go. And then there's an interesting section that said marijuana cannot constitute reasonable suspicion of a crime. So in essence, that renders our drug sniffing dogs ineffective. And I had a discussion with someone who said, yeah, you know how there's an odor that comes from houses where people are growing or smoking? He said, that's not reason enough to have the dogs used. That's just a small amount, that's just a small section of the prop, but I thought that was an interesting piece. Here's a really important piece. There's going to be a 16% cap on taxes. That 16% is what they're going to charge for marijuana taxes. Well, two things. One, remember the Centennial study. For every buck collected, what were they paying out? $4.50. Good. What if this isn't enough? What if we have a whole lot more problems and 16% doesn't cover it? We don't have a way to raise taxes. I guess we pay for it, right? We, the taxpayer. And here's the other thing. Who doesn't charge taxes? The black market, right? This is kind of an invitation. This is a welcome mat. Come on in because you don't charge taxes, so you can sell a lot more black market pot underneath that 16% threshold, right? What a mess that's going to be. Petty offenses. This is where I think is a really good debate. If you are possessing 1 ounce to 2.5 ounces, it's a petty offense. Now listen, minors with less than 1 ounce, it's a $100 fine and 4 hours of drug counseling. Minors on the second offense, another $100 fine and 8 ounces of drug counseling. Third offense, it's a class 1 misdemeanor. Now that sounds pretty compassionate, right? It's actually not. Because I was sitting next to law enforcement in Prescott when we were talking about this, and he said, petty offenses, he said, sometimes we don't even have time to respond to those. He said, there's no teeth in this law. He said, this is going to cause recidivism. He said, in fact, that's exactly what happened in Massachusetts. These baby laws, these laws with no teeth in them, caused people to use even more. If Sheila Polk, Yavapai County attorney, was on my right, and Bill Montgomery, who is on the Supreme Court now, but was Maricopa County, was on my left, they would say to you, the way the law is now, where you can have 1 or 2 offenses and then you're going to get charged with a class 6 felony, that law has some teeth in it. Because we are a very compassionate state. We try to get you in drug rehab. So we're going to give you a couple of offenses, warnings, get you into drug rehab before we charge you. He said that is the perfect way to do it because people believe that if they don't behave, they're going to end up in trouble. And so I said to Sheila, how many people are actually in Arizona jails for small possession? She said about 100 people, 0.03%. And I said, well, who's in jail? She said the traffickers, about 11% or so, about 3,800 people. She said, we throw the traffickers in jail, the dealers, not the small-time offenders. She said, I really feel strongly that we should have some teeth in the law. It's like telling your teenagers that come in drunk on Friday night, stop doing that. I'm going to ground you. And then we don't. What are they liable to do next Friday night? If I don't have any fist in my glove, right as mom. So employers, this is a really problematic area. And let's just play a game for a second. And I'm going to be the governor and your CEOs, and I want you to bring your headquarters to Arizona. Bring all those jobs to Arizona. I want you to employ people in this room and all of our kids and all of our relatives. And you're saying, you know, Governor, I really have enjoyed our meeting tonight, but what about that pot thing? What about low productivity for my employees? What about more accidents? What about my drug-free workers' comp discount that goes away? What about property damage and GL? What about, do I have to pay for medical marijuana through my coverage program? This pot thing that you guys did in Arizona is really problematic. So thank you, Governor. It's good to see you guys. Arizona's beautiful, but I'm going to Texas, where Governor Greg Abbott is waiting for me with open arms, and this pot thing doesn't exist. You see what can happen to our struggling economy? We are coming right out of a pandemic, and we're doing a great job trying to get our small businesses up and running again. The last thing we need is to sock them in the teeth with a pot initiative that drives them away or creates problems for them, lawsuits and so forth. Okay, so who's against it? The Arizona Chamber of Commerce, obviously. They think this is a bad idea. The Arizona Sheriff's Association has come out. Jim Driscoll gave us a great video. The sheriffs have said what a problem this is. Arizona Governor Doug Ducey, the American Academy of Pediatrics, the American Medical Association, a lot of people are really concerned about this. So let's sum up, and then I'm going to let Dwight talk about 208. We can't put the genie back in the bottle. The best thing you can tell your friends who are thinking about voting for this is we can't fix it. It's virtually impossible because it's a ballot initiative. And the last thing we should do is make a mistake we can't come back from. We're too smart as Arizonans to make a decision that we can't fix. Our kids are our most precious asset. Their brains are their most precious asset. Their brains are not formed until they're 25. And if they start using this high potency stuff, they can lower IQ, they can do lasting damage to their brain. We saw some kids in a Colorado psychiatric hospital that are so damaged they'll not come out. A good friend of mine who presents with me had a son commit suicide because he felt he was so far gone he just couldn't dig his way out of his marijuana addiction. It is heartbreaking, some of the stories that I could tell you about this. What we want for our kids is a drug-free childhood. No alcohol, no pills, no pot. Let's not put one more hurdle in front of our precious children to grow up normal, healthy, and lucid. As responsible adults, we would never do that. Our personal safety would be compromised. We don't need any more high drivers on the road. We don't need anybody high at work, right? I'm talking about your surgeon, your pilot, your construction workers, your teachers, nobody. Let's keep that at a minimum. Medical science before public opinion, all this is still coming out. All of this we're still learning about. We're still learning about what these high potency products can do. We're seeing the results now. We need to take stock and pay attention. And then let's be real clear. This is a ballot initiative that you can see, based on what we've talked about, that was written and funded by big corporate marijuana. They are dying to get their mitts on your wallets. They really want to make a lot of money, and they're not so concerned about cleaning up the mess, which will be our job. So I say to them, if you want to sell very high potency products, go somewhere else and leave us smart Arizonans alone. Okay, real quickly, there's some great websites and Facebook pages. The one that I really like is No207AZ. That's easy to remember, no207az.com. There's a great book by Alex Berenson, Tell Your Children, The Truth About Marijuana, Mental Illness, and Violence. Dr. Ed Goget, you'll love this book, Marijuana Debunked. The reason that I like his book is because guess who Dr. Goget is? He's a burning Democrat. And he's an addiction specialist who's a psychiatrist here in Arizona. He's written one of the best books against marijuana I've ever seen. Ben Court's book, Weed Inc. is good. Chronic State, I think you guys are good. Did you already show it? Or you
Yeah, we will. I had it at the movie theater. Just,
Yeah.
For the drug task force. I just showed it at
Fantastic.
the movie theater, and amazing.
Good. And the new one is called smokescreenmovie.org. So yeah, do that one next. Good for you guys. That's a great one. Smoke Screen. There you go. It's great. And that's about Colorado as well. So vote no on 207, guys, and I'm going to let Dwight talk to you about 208. Let's keep our kids, our roads, and our workplaces safe. Yes, sir.
Got a question. Back to the 60s, back to marijuana trademarks. Are they involved in this as much as I think they are?
The people from the 60s and 70s?
Big tobacco.
Oh, that is such a good question.
Years ago.
You bet. Because big tobacco says, oh my gosh, look at this profit center. Because Harvest Health is publicly traded on the NASDAQ, so Altria, and these big tobacco companies are buying up dispensaries, publicly traded dispensaries and smaller ones. So absolutely right. We beat big tobacco back. They're now back in the game because they're so excited that this is going to be a brand new profit center for them. Good question. Thank you.
Andrea, I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so regarding somebody that moved from Colorado, a friend of mine that joined the task force in Colorado.
Can you stand up and talk a little bit? I'm going to get the other mic.
He came and gave us some pointers. He moved from Colorado and everything. One thing he said that was so interesting, I didn't even know, is again, all sales from dispensary has to be cash. And he said in Colorado that everything has to be done in cash because they can't go to a bank.
That's
They
right.
use federal.
That's right.
And I mean, you just don't think about that. But then somebody mentioned they do maybe have a state bank in Colorado that everybody can. Because I guess what was happening is, he said, is a lot of the cartels were then, they were breaking in at these places and robbing them because all their money is inside their stores.
Right.
Because they can't go and cash
Yeah.
and bank it.
You're
That's
absolutely right. The reason this is a cash-only business.
Yeah.
And what you find is where there's plenty of cash, what is there? Plenty of crime.
Crime.
You look at the hot spots in Denver, and you look at the crime, and the map overlays with these dispensaries. The reason it's a cash-only business is because it is still a FDA Schedule I illegal substance. It's no different in the government's mind, whether we agree or not, I'm not going to get into that, than meth, cocaine, heroin. It's that same class of drugs. Therefore, the banks, since they are regulated by the federal government, cannot finance these businesses. It's the reason why we've got these dispensaries. Wouldn't you think, if this is medicine, why doesn't the doctor give you a script and you go to CVS and get it filled?
Yeah.
Because it's illegal.
Right.
It's still illegal. The fact that our federal government has allowed all of this illegal activity to creep in. And it started, and I will be quite candid because I think I'm with friends, it started in the Obama administration. Eric Holder basically turned a blind eye to when this got started, saying, oh, it's a states' rights issue. BS. BS. Yes, exactly.
And, you know, and law enforcement actually in Denver told us one time at a drug center that there are bank accounts called grass lawn services or something where they're actually laundering this money.
Well, and the other thing we now hear.
Under the guise that it's a lawn
they're
service.
actually laundering money back into Mexico and buying debit cards and things so that they're trying to figure out. How many of you are AZCDL members? Anybody? Arizona citizens?
I know who it is.
How many? Yeah. How many of you own a firearm? You don't have to raise.
Woohoo! This is Payson.
How many remember question 11E on the federal firearms transaction record that you signed? Anybody?
You can't
use any illegal.
That's
That's
right.
right.
Do you use marijuana or are you
cannot
addicted
have
to
fire.
marijuana? And guess what? There's now a new disclaimer. Even if it's legal in your state, either recreationally or medically, it doesn't make any difference.
You can't own a firearm.
So
is what it says.
there's this conflict now, and think about it. You know these people, and we've talked to people out there and say, oh, you're crazy. This doesn't make any sense. No, this is the way you have the problem with the difference between your federal law and your state laws. And guess what? There's something called the Supremacy Clause in the United States Constitution. The problem was our federal government does not have the political will to go into Colorado and perp walk the governor right out because he's running an illegal drug business called the state of Colorado.
Yeah, but you have, some of these states are implying the nullification process on it.
It doesn't work. It doesn't work.
But that's what they're implying.
I understand what they're implying, but it doesn't. The fact is, the supremacy, that's why we have the Supremacy Clause in the Constitution.
Oh, one more thing is, we sent out some information on blogs and Facebook regarding this. It just seems like the millennials and the younger crowd with the recreation, I'm not sure if you guys are hitting it, their comment is, quit taking away our medical marijuana.
Yeah.
They keep thinking this has something to do with medical marijuana, and they're not understanding it has nothing to do with it. We already passed it.
Right.
But their mindset, and they keep saying, I had like 50 comments. Educate yourself. You need to educate. You're going to take my medical marijuana away. I'm like, I'm not touching your medical marijuana. What I'm going to touch, and I don't want to have in my sandbox, is the recreation where your kids, everybody's kids could get into it. So I think that's the mindset we really have to change, that it doesn't do anything with the medical. It just now means anybody and everybody, and I as a teacher could go in and go smoke a joint right before I go teach your children.
Right.
And that's the whole point we have to get across.
Right. That's a very good point. We're not touching medical. We just don't want medicine used recreationally.
Exactly.
Think about if somebody uses marijuana before work and they're taking care of your mom.
Yeah, or kids.
Or they're taking care of your child or your grandchild in a daycare.
Yep.
This is a hot mess, and Arizona was the only state in 2016 out of 9 states where marijuana was on the ballot, either recreational or medical or both, to defeat it. And folks, we can do it again.
Woo!
We can do it again. All right, since we're called it's like there's the Blues Brothers, we're the no couple. No and no. It's real easy. Investment in education. We're all about educating our children. And don't get me started on why it's a problem in the state, but I'm going to give you 30 seconds. The reason we have such a problem is because so much of our land in Arizona has never been returned to us, which is the agreement we had with the federal government when we became a state 108 years ago. Okay? The fact of the matter is land, and we have a state land trust, but this land can be used for productive purposes. This was the same thing east of the Mississippi 150 years ago. All this land, the land was owned by the federal government and then given back to the states for productive purposes. This is why we have a problem year in and year out funding education. There's so much land out there that we don't control. But, let me go on. We have spent up through from 2015, and it will be included in the 2021 budget, $6.4 billion cumulatively on education in this state. Okay? And in 2016, just that 1 year, K through 12, $3.5 billion.
Where is that money going?
That's the good question. That's the 65.
You say
Yeah.
you graduate in school and they can't even read and write.
And let me address that. Once the legislature approves it, the government signs it, the money then goes to the school districts. It is ultimately up to the school boards where that money goes. And I've done enough looking at the school boards and where the money is spent. Give you a great example, Cottonwood, not too far from here. Not particularly large town, maybe this, I don't know how big it is, but I would bet it's not all that different than Payson. 2 individual school districts, 2 superintendents, 2 complete staffs. Why? Well, the first part of it is one part of it's high school, the rest of it's grade school. There is a proposition on the ballot in Cottonwood to combine it. Why it's taken this long is beyond me, but this is the problem. These are government employees. I think both of these superintendents make well into 6 figures. So the challenge for us as conservatives, as Republicans, get on the school boards. That's where it starts. We as conservatives, and I know this because our son is in his mid-30s, and I didn't do necessarily, we were living in Texas at the time. I didn't do my job. Unfortunately, we had a pretty good school district. But it was the same thing back then because we kept looking at the administrative staff and the money that was going not into the classroom, but everywhere else. And that's the problem. You remember what a big deal the governor made about 2 years ago, the 20% raise? Okay. And then finally, in 18, there was another defined 645 that was, again, dedicated solely to increases in teacher salaries. So now, what are they doing? Well, guess what? Invest in Education Act. This also went through the legal process, and again was our Supreme Court said it followed all the rules. Why is this important? Anybody know who Stand for Children LLC is? It is an Oregon-based special interest group. It goes back to this fundamental problem that we, the voters, created ourselves back in 1998, where we have these citizen initiatives that are protected. What does that mean? It means the governor can't veto it, and it takes 75% of the legislature. Think about that. It would take 75% of 90 people to improve. You can't take anything away, but you can improve it. It's never going to happen. And what has happened is, and in fact, in 2018, everybody remembered Tom Steyer and his clean energy deal, trying to get us to be solar by 2025. They take and they're beating us about the head and shoulders with this citizen initiative. And it isn't a citizen initiative. These people come in and spend millions of dollars to get circulators, to get people to sign these things. Walk up to you in front of Safeway or Bashas'. Here, listen, we want to get this on the ballot. Just sign this. Nobody reads it. We have to work with our legislator and some really smart people, the Arizona Free Enterprise Club, which we are big supporters of, to fix this. And I'll give you there is a quick fix. Right now, it takes roughly 250,000 qualified signatures to get on the ballot, to get one of these things on the ballot. And we've got roughly 2.5 million registered voters. Every one of the people that sign is supposed to be a registered voter. Well, what do these signature gatherers do? Well, they go down to Maricopa County and they get all these people to sign it down there. My idea is, why don't we make them come to Gila County and Yavapai County where we live? and Greeley and Graham and get a percentage of the 250,000 people. Make it a lot tougher on them.
Like an electoral college.
And yeah, exactly. And then what we do is when we found something we didn't really like, we'd camp out in Graham County with presentation like this, and nobody signed the ballot initiative. But the problem is Arizona is getting beat, the citizens are getting beat up by something that's been in place for almost 30 years now that was intended to be the right thing. If it was a citizen-based initiative, legislature and the governor couldn't override us. But now what's happened is it's turned on and big money's coming in. And these people, and guess what? This is LD6, check, yes. Miss Felicia French, who is running to be your senator, and Corell Evans, and Art Babbitt are all backed by those people. Why is that important? Guess why? They spent $4.7 million to put this one on the ballot. This is big money. 90% of it came with Stand for Children. And this is the part that really irritates me. Remember the CARES Act, the PPP, Payroll Protection Plan, government put in place, giving companies. These characters took it, and that's how they ran the ballot initiative. They took taxpayer money from the government through the PPP plan and ran it, and this is the way they're doing it. These are not nice people.
Explain that a little bit better, what is the payroll?
The CARES Act, remember last spring, remember the CARES Act? The stimulus, thank you. That's right. Here we go. How many more trillions of dollars in debt to keep our economy afloat? And these characters take the money and hammer us with it, with this ballot initiative. That's right. That's right. It's a 78% income tax, and they keep saying, "Oh, it's all the rich people." No, it's not all the rich people. It's small business. Yeah, it will make Arizona have one of the highest income tax rates in the United States, and there's no accountability on where the money's spent. So we talk about getting back to the classrooms. The other thing that really irritated me, the schools are closed due to COVID, and these damn teachers are out there getting signatures and not teaching our kids. It will punish small businesses because if you're a small business, you know that you run your business accounting back through your individual return. So this will punish, absolutely punish small businesses at the time they least need it. Many of them are just hanging on by their fingernails. It will, in fact, derail what economic recovery have. And I'm going to get slightly political here, not like our governor's trying. Sorry. And guess what? Here we go again. Doesn't make it to the classrooms. Does not make it to the classroom. So, vote no. It's real simple. Vote Republican down the ballot. When you come to the two props, vote no. It's real simple. Real simple. Questions? Yes, ma'am.
So being a teacher and being in the education world, our biggest thing of what this gentleman in front of me said was, again, because I pushed kids through for almost 10 years, pushed kids through. The biggest thing that, again, why we don't have the investment of our children, anywhere, is because of the high stakes standards testing. Sorry. So the high stakes. It's not on.
There you go.
That's it.
That's me.
Yeah. So the high. Oh.
Michael, is the second mic not on?
I don't think so.
Okay, so the high stakes standardized testing that they started in the 90s here was the Ames. How many of you guys ever heard of Ames inside the school district? Now it's the AC merits. How many of you guys have ever heard of AC merits? It's again, all it is basically, and it's again it's through the United States. It's kids have to take this Common Core. How many have heard Common Core? Okay, you heard Common Core? That's AC merits. That was Ames. Again, so Common Core was again that agenda to get every single student the same kind of information and standard. Okay, so what has happened is because of that, Arizona, when Obama was there, had to carry it out and said, hey, you want $25 million to go to your school system. Here you go. You can have it, but you have to do this. And you have to jump through these hoops, and your kids have to take that standard, high-stakes standards testing. So just real quick, that's what happened. So these kids are taking tests, so I'm just going to go to your thing of why they are producing out there. Kids take tests. I tested these kids. They don't pass. They don't pass. So I had 5th graders. They didn't pass. I had a few that didn't pass. What do? Do we hold it back? No, don't hold it back. You move them on. And then you tell the 6th grade teachers, here, you've got 50 5th graders or 100 5th graders. You have to now do intervention with them. And we let them keep going on. Well, what do you think about their education? It starts to become the Grand Canyon. Teachers cannot help a Grand Canyon and move it back together if you wanted to. A 6-month, you probably can work with that child and you can help them. A Grand Canyon, two years behind. A student 2 years behind. I had a kid who was 3 years behind. 6th grade, he was in 2nd grade math. And I kept pushing him on, and he keeps going. Not until we get rid of Common Core. And I am upset with Doug Ducey because he told us when he was here and he was running his very first time, he told us he was going to get rid of it. He lied. He absolutely lied. That's my opinion. He lied to my face because we and I had a talk at the tea party. That's what needs to go away. Yes, I agree with you. Get on the school boards and stuff on that, but you got to get rid of the Common Core. You've got to get rid of it. Quit taking money from the federal government.
And don't get us started on comprehensive sex education.
That's bad.
You know, we talked, our friend Obama said that elections have consequences. The biggest consequence that we had was the fact that we lost the Secretary of Education, the Superintendent of Public Instruction, to a flaming liberal who is trying to install comprehensive sex education. And what does that mean? We've actually looked at this textbook. They're talking about teaching middle schoolers about masturbation.
And worse, abortion. So real quickly, Shirley was kind enough to pick up the 207s. I'd like to make a recommendation. I'm going to put them on the back on the way out. Take some more. Because a good friend of ours, Walt Blackman, and yours, actually said, if you vote for me, I might win. If you get 5 of your friends to vote for me, I will win. So if you'll distribute these to your neighbors, to somebody who's not here tonight or not aware of it, that would be wonderful. Because we're within kissing distance of killing 207. We were 10 points out, and now we're closing the gap. We're so close now.
We also have palm cards in the back, little cheat sheets, and you can take it. We got a bunch of, a couple thousand of them. Yeah. Back in the spring, it looked like it was a done deal. She said 10, it was closer to 60-40. The last official poll that was done here in Arizona by an official pollster was we were down by 1 point. And let me tell you what's really impressive is he broke it down between urban, suburban, and rural. Rural Arizona is getting this. In rural Arizona was up by over 12 points. That there were 50% of people said no to 207 versus 38% yes. So thank all of you if you got it.
So Sheriff Shepherd, yeah, Brenda Barton, she's one of us. She's on this too. Sheriff Shepherd is here, and I want him to come up and say a few things about what he thinks about it. Because we know that the Arizona Sheriff's Association is no on this.
Yeah.
So we're so glad to see him.
Yeah, you know what? Maybe we'll get him to do a video because right now we got Sheriff Lamb. You know Sheriff Lamb down.
Hollywood did.
Yeah, Hollywood did a video for us. Would you like? Yeah, would you like to? Yeah, would you like to do one?
Okay, so what would you like me to answer?
Just talk about it from your
Just talk about it, from.
You talking about the marijuana initiatives?
Yeah,
okay.
just the marijuana.
So we've been fighting this. I think you guys know that for a long time. I've been in front of you talking about this issue before, it seems like every excuse that we have put in front of us doesn't really hold too much water, right? The one that some of you probably heard me talk about before. It was just as safe as alcohol. I would like everybody in this room right now to raise your hand if you have not been affected by alcohol sometime in your life, by a friend, by a neighbor, by a family member, or something like that. And have we fixed the alcohol problem? Do we still have people driving drunk and killing people for no reason, just because they're driving drunk. I saw a video this morning, they were showing it on the news, about a lady that was drunk, speeding through a neighborhood, crashes into the person's house, completely takes off about a half of the house. I can't believe anybody wasn't hurt other than her, the driver. So obviously, we haven't fixed that problem, so we're going to give ourselves another substance. It kind of puts us in the same place. And the thing that has always bothered me about marijuana versus alcohol is we do at least have a measurement system for that, so we can put that, we can go in front of the judge and say, Judge, this is a presumptive limit, this is what we caught this person doing, and so at least we have some evidence. And just like she told you before in the presentation, there is no test for marijuana level of intoxication. So how do you know, how will we know, or how can we even prove in a court of law that that was a factor in something? Because it's when you even if you drew blood or urine, it only shows the level of metabolite in there. There's no way to measure how, say, if you will, high they were at the time when that happened. Very problematic for law enforcement. They said, Colorado said, we're going to solve this problem, we'll fix it, and they have nothing at this point to come up with that kind of measurement. So that's how come we're against it. We just don't see, and then the danger to the kids, and the fact that once you decriminalize, if you will, something like this, it just seems to become like it's more commonplace, and people don't pay it any respect, and it just becomes more and more accessible to people. So we'll always be against it. We're not going to be in favor of it. We already have problems enough with folks and drugs in our communities, and I just don't see why we need to legalize that.
Thank you for this.
And it is a gateway drug. I'll tell you that it is,
Yeah,
but it
baloney.
is.
It absolutely is, and my argument with that is that it puts you in the culture. Okay, if marijuana was the only thing you ever smoked, and you smoked some marijuana, that's all you ever did, it still puts you in with folks that deal drugs. So there's going to be, for the folks that aren't strong or have some weaknesses, it's just going to exacerbate that problem, and it doesn't change. I think Jim had his hand up first. Yes.
Seems like that's the factor we have with drugs, the dogs. I know dogs are expensive, but then when you
$15,000 to $20,000 just to buy one.
Why can't these dogs be used to do this and do that? Oh, well, you can't do the can't. Well, what good are they if the dogs can't on a traffic stop? I know you
Right.
can. Take the dog around the car, let people see it, people driving by. Wow, they're going to be stiff. We're not going to go through Payson. We're not going to go through Gila.
Right.
When I go over to the park where they say the druggies hang out, Lord, this is how you guys do it.
Oh, our dogs are out
I want
sniffing
to
stuff
be
all the time.
my puppy here. I mean, at the schools, we just don't seem to care about whether we be
No, actually, remember, let me back up on that one real fast and make sure you understand what the difference is. For schools, it is the school's choice as to whether they bring us in to sniff their lockers. So if they say, we don't want you on our school grounds and we don't want you doing this, it is all up to the administration of the school.
We don't want to give our school a bad.
Right.
Yes, that's.
Now, we have some schools in this county that say, bring them dogs in anytime you want to. And I can tell you that they have a lot less problems with drugs. Yes, Don?
Adam, 65 years ago, I was in high school, and something I discovered about marijuana, at that time it was quite common. There is a worse case than what you've been discussing here. I have never seen a person who's on marijuana who also drinks alcohol, even beer, that doesn't become downright vicious.
Absolutely.
And I have
Well, it's just
seen
like
them-
any intoxicant, it's liable to mellow them out and put them to sleep, or it's liable to turn them into Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. You don't know until it happens.
absolute road rage.